So it's my pleasure to introduce Jane Wong, who's been involved from the very beginning with our NSF grant as one of our test sites at Stephen F. Austin State University. So she's going to tell us about some of her experiences through the last 4 years of using SAGE in the classroom.
Thanks. So this is going to be really quick and informal. I asked Rob if he wanted me to talk, and he said yes, and I said what about, and he said how students learn SAGE and with SAGE, so there's the title. So I don't think you can really separate that from what we present to them when we tell them about SAGE and ask them to use it on our campus. So you'll get a little snapshot of what it was like for us to change from what we were doing to what we're doing now, and how we as a faculty use it. And I hope that if you have anything to ask or say during the talk, you'll just chime in. I said we'd do 20 minutes, which means I have 6 minutes left, so I think we're not so worried about time today. Okay, so quick history. Stephen F. Austin, if you look in the upper right there, there's Texas. That red star is us, kind of screaming we're here. We're not near any major metropolitan areas. 2 hours is about the drive to Houston and 3 to Dallas. So we have a whole lot of students from Texas and East Texas and Louisiana, right where we are. We have about 13,000 students. Hardly any of them are ready for calculus when they come to us. We have about 40 or 50 math majors at a time, graduate about 8 or 10 a year, and most of them become high school math teachers. So that's who we're looking at. We used to do Mathematica for our calculus labs and anything in upper level courses that required computer algebra. We started using SAGE the academic year 2010-2011, and really that was part of the Utmost grant. We really would not have changed over, I don't think, if it hadn't been for the Utmost support. So we have Tom and Tom's one of the PIs, and I was an official test site participant. I don't think we had any other people that got official monetary support or course releases or anything like that, but we kind of spread it around. I got to do an MAA prep workshop as part of this, so before I came to this conference that happened, this version of the conference that was 4 years ago, I did that online workshop, and some other people here did that too. So I knew a little bit about what SAGE could do before I came. And now we don't maintain our mathematical licenses at all, and anything that we do in computer algebra throughout the whole department, anybody who does anything uses SAGE. So we totally switched over now. How we use SAGE, we're all on the web. Tom and I were talking, we don't think anybody has a local installation of SAGE except for him. We're a Windows-based department, and even the faculty who are using it for research purposes, we all use web versions. We do have a dedicated server through the grant that Morgan maintains, and it's here, yep. Right? And the other thing that grant did for us was we have a listserv so that people who know a lot about SAGE were just an email away to help us with things that we had questions about. Things like, our server's down, could you fix it, to we don't know how to do blah, anything that we needed at all. And everybody was really responsive, and that helped a lot. Our students use SAGE in the calculus sequence, linear algebra, differential equations, numerical analysis, again, all worksheet level. We don't have anybody who really does command line stuff that we know of. If there's anybody that we haven't asked, we'd be pretty surprised about it. The proofs course uses LaTeX and sharing capabilities of worksheets, but not any mathematics. So that's one way. I hadn't really anticipated people using SAGE, but basically they use it as a sharing device for LaTeX documents. Faculty use demos and interacts in all kinds of classes, meaning I would show stuff here but wouldn't expect the students to interact, and all kinds of people use it for research, faculty and students. The faculty goals for student learning are about what you would expect. We want students to know that computer algebra systems exist, what they can do, what they can't do, when it's good to use them, how to interpret their results. We want students to learn how to do stuff by themselves without us, and to communicate their results. And really, the goals would be that anything we teach them is platform independent or software system independent. So positive things the faculty say students learn. They do learn persistence, how to work with peers, how to be careful. Student complaints about SAGE include things like, if the code's not perfect, it doesn't work. And they're surprised by this. I don't really know why they are. But, and how to seek help from sources other than their instructor. These are positive things. Negative things, a lot of students will do anything in their power to avoid the technology. So, for example, in linear algebra, I had a requirement that most homework be turned in by a SAGE worksheet, and I had students typing in all of their mathematical work as LaTeX rather than using SAGE cells to do things. So that's a pretty intensive avoidance of technology, and what I was not prepared for when it happened. A lot of them say they won't use it in the future, and they don't transfer what they learn in Cal 1 to the labs in Cal 2. And I think a lot of these negative things have to do with sort of a lack of cohesion in how the department presents their SAGE experience to them. You know, if you don't require them to use what they learned in Cal 1 and Cal 2, then, you know, it's going to go by the wayside. A lot of students don't use it for anything other than what they're required to use it for, and don't see anything about the power that their graphing calculators have, which is unfortunate. So, for example, in linear algebra, if they needed to do a row reduction, I would go to SAGE to do it, and they would go to their graphing calculators because they're like, oh, it's right here and it's fast, and I know exactly what to type in, and it's easier for me to do that. So that's a battle. By the end of the semester, you've got some of them converted from that and some of them that aren't. If you ask the students how they learn to use SAGE, they'll say mostly on our own. Tom, maybe you can speak to this, but when I use SAGE, they see me using it in demos in class. I'll answer questions if they have them, but I don't sit down and say, this is how you do this in SAGE, this is the command that does that. I'll entertain questions about it, but I don't sit down and hold their hands through it. They learn to Google code pretty quickly. Some of them will say that this SAGE produced documentation was helpful. Some of them will say that it's not easy to navigate. Some of them will say that eventually they could predict how the code structure was going to work, and would stop having to look things up, which was great. That's what you want to happen. Maybe about half of them would feel this way, I think. The textbook that I used in linear algebra helped a lot. I wanted to show you that quickly. This is Rob's book, First Course in Linear Algebra, and it's your prototype, right?
Yeah.
So I'm embarrassing him a little bit, I'm not showing it. But
this is where I'm going, but looking better.
so the way this helped with the SAGE was, in the reference section, there's SAGE that you can click on, and here are the SAGE parts of all the sections. You notice Rob doesn't number things, he acronyms them, which takes students some getting used to. If I go to this section on vectors, there's verbiage that talks them through things, and then some single cells that connect to the single cell server that they can try some things in, and they're all live. And they're sort of loaded with leading examples and things like that. So a lot of what they needed to do homework, they could find in their textbook, and it was only when they were going outside, sort of off the reservation, that they would find that elsewhere. Obstacles, when we first started, we had students in linear algebra who did Mathematica for calculus labs. They said Mathematica was easier, it was easier to find help. I think it was a more, this is what I'm used to type of thing. Now that we've been doing it for a while, we don't have anybody who has any experience with Mathematica really, so they don't say that. They used to say that the server was down a lot. That doesn't happen any longer. Nobody complains about that much anymore at all. Their other complaints were, other than what I've already mentioned, was that they'll say, I'm not a programmer, this feels like I'm doing a computer program, I don't know how to do that, I've never had to do that before. We do have a requirement that the students take a 100 level computer science class. That class is Java-based, and it's not a prerequisite for anything that we do. And so they can take it their last semester, they can take it their first semester. Obviously, when I advise students, I try and get them to take it as early as possible, but I can't make them. And so, how much it would help them, I'm not really sure. But that's what they'll say is, you're making me computer program, and I've never done that before, and I don't appreciate it. If you ask students about using Sage in the future, the ones that like it will say they'll use it for exactly the things you expect them to use it for. I mentioned a lot of our students are going to be high school math teachers. Several of them have said, I can show my classes cool things with this, which I wasn't expecting, so I was happy to hear that. And some of them will say, it's just cool to poke around with it. So others will say that I'm never going to use it again ever. Some out of spite, some because they don't see the utility. And then Susan has sent out SALG-Ms, right, to some people. Is that right, Susan? Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar with it, the SALG is a sort of a course evaluation, really, but it stands for Student Assessment of Learning Gains. So you ask the students, how much did this or that help you learn? And the M is for mathematics, and so there's a version that the Utmost Grant wanted us to use that deals with this for mathematics. The SALG is free and worth your time if you're interested in a course evaluation that actually tells you something. I use it a lot now. But I asked them how these things that I did with them in my linear algebra class helped them. It's on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 is no help or no gain in my learning, and 5 is great help or great gain in my learning. These are kind of hovering mostly around 3, which is moderate help. And in my linear algebra class, a lot of them said they'd use it elsewhere. So that's pretty much all I have to share with you today, unless anybody has any questions. I think, in summary, it's been a good thing for our department. It's given us a lot of chances to get people who wouldn't normally work together, working together on things. And like I said, with the calculus labs, we looked at them and said, are they doing what we want them to do? If we have to migrate the handouts we give the students over to another system anyway, we might as well think about what they're learning. And so that was a good opportunity for us. Yeah.
So have you tried using videos to train them on the beginnings of Sage? Because sometimes students react well to that.
Yeah, we haven't tried that. Basically, we have some tutorials that we all kind of pass around and we all use, but video hasn't been a part of it, so that's a good suggestion.
How many folks are in this class? Did I miss that?
In
this one?
I got 19 responses. There were more than that in the class, but 19 answered. Yeah?
Can you try to make some longer-term follow-up of the evaluation of the student that the students make of the process? Like, in which year do they take this course? Sophomore year, or?
This one was, I think, fall 2012.
But I mean, they were like sophomore students? Or?
Some of it, mostly juniors, probably. Yeah, so we don't have them any longer.
Okay,
Most of
so
them.
you can check when they graduate to ask them if
Yeah,
they found
yeah.
further use for Sage.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. It's something our department's working on, is keeping track of people when they leave. We're working pretty hard on it, but yeah, it's a good suggestion to see. I would be surprised if a lot of them are still using it.
Yeah.
So, but
So we can help you.
yeah, that would be good.
The 3.9 is pretty strong though, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Are there any, I don't know what the right word, objective ways of measuring if using Sage as a tool helps students understand something better? I mean, this is a self-assessment that you're talking about here.
Mhm.
Is there any, did you do like comparison between two groups where one used Sage and one didn't to see if there was any difference in their performance or something like that?
That would be cool. That hasn't really been possible for us. I mean, we have one section of linear algebra, a term, and it unfortunately, in my opinion, bounces around a lot who teaches it. So, for example, because of the Utmost grant, I got to teach linear algebra 4 times in a row because I kept waving my hands and saying, but I'm on this grant, I need to keep doing this. But otherwise, it would be me, and then it would be Tom, and then it would be just all kinds of other people. And so, there'd be so many variables there, I think.
But we have stuck with Rob's book.
Yeah. So we could see about that, but for example, I integrated that big project, and then the last 2 people who taught it did nothing with regard to a project this time, so probably feels pretty different to the students, I think. So, yeah.
I don't have any experience at the undergraduate level, but we've used like a boot camp idea for teaching programming to scientists, and these are like, so software carpentry, there's this group that puts them on, and it helps us because, you know, we have engineers and scientists, and getting across the idea that writing software and doing some level of programming is actually part of your toolkit.
Yeah.
It's not somebody else's job, and it enables them, and it gets them excited because it's a social environment. And I don't know, that might be something, it seems like it could be fun for sophomores maybe to have like a 1-week boot camp where you're not necessarily learning any new calculus or linear algebra, but you are being tasked with some programming projects that you can work on as a team.
Yeah, so you're saying you did a 1 week, or you would
Ours have usually
think
been
of it-
limited to 3 days,
Okay.
but we've had other settings where we had a deadline coming up and it turned into a week-long boot camp where we're all sequestered in a hotel and working
Okay.
away, and suddenly you get people who haven't been contributing, you know, they're just kind of sitting there doing nothing, and at some point that kind of social pressure encourages
Yeah.
them to engage, and then by the end of the week that gains some confidence, and that kind of takes off. You know?
yeah.
The students might have trouble being sequestered in the hotel.
Yeah, I've actually thought about this boot camp idea, so just to follow up on some of these courses that Jane's talking about. Last fall I took, so SAGE now is the computer algebra system of choice at SFA. Everybody's doing SAGE, okay? Faculty have bought in, even a few of the students have bought in, okay? So they start out in Calculus 1, they go to Calculus 2, Calculus 3, then they hit Jane's linear algebra class, and probably after that they hit differential equations. So in the fall I taught multivariable calculus, in the spring I taught differential equations, where they had to use some sort of, you know, software to visualize direction fields and so on. Otherwise they weren't going to make it through the course. So coming into, and I got a surprise about the preparation of the students, especially in vector calculus. Yes, I've used SAGE, but I went through the motions in Calculus 1 and Calculus 2 just to get through the course. And I really hate it, and I don't want to use it. And so they just do it because it gets them to the next level. A few of them have bought into it, okay? And then they get to differential equations and they find, I've got to use software, otherwise it's not going to happen. In addition, in this vector calculus course, okay, we not only get the students who've come up through our calculus sequence, we get transfers from community colleges that haven't had SAGE.
We get a lot of transfers
Yes.
from community colleges.
And so, you know, I'm going, in a vector calculus class, I had one girl sitting in the front who actually did everything I told her to, was a very smart girl, okay, and earned a B in the course, and I gave D's and F's to half the course, which is some of the worst grades I've ever given, okay. He goes, I hate to admit it, but I don't know my unit circle, okay. So they're coming in, and I've thought about, well, they just don't have the preparation, and it's, you know, SAGE, pre-calculus, calculus 1, and could we do some sort of boot camp for, you know, at 1 week for people coming in from community colleges. So I think this idea of a boot camp, we've really got to consider it, and I really like the idea.
One thing that we do that's a little similar, I see your hand, okay, just a second, thanks, is that we have a Maymester at our school, and we offer master's degrees. And so the students can be, the master's degree students can be full-time in the summer. We have a Maymester course, which is like 12 days of instruction, and it's technology, typesetting and software for mathematical study. And they spend a third to a half of their time on Sage and programming and things like that. So our master's level students are getting that kind of experience, but we haven't translated that to the undergrads yet. And the master's level students, once they have that, they're good to go with Sage, and they utilize it at what I would think would be appropriate times throughout, but we haven't found a way to translate that to the undergrads.
That proofs course that you mentioned sounds like it might be a good setting to do for the boot camp type thing. I know we had to, like in my undergrad experience, that's when you had to learn programming was in the,
Yeah.
like required. Because there's already like camaraderie amongst like math majors and.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I think we're kind of in flux right now with, would you agree, what we want that course to do, the proofs course?
Yes.
Everything at our school pings around, this person teaches it this way, this person teaches it that way, but that is a good suggestion to do it in the proofs course, especially if they're already expected to do the LaTeX and, you know, get accounts and do worksheets and things like that. It's a natural extension. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about perhaps making a CS0 below CS1? In other words, that Java is kind of a hard first language, and a typical CS1 is the foundation for a CS major, so they're really going to shove a lot of information into it. But to make a fun class that just uses Python, where the expectations are not so huge, so that the stress on the student is not so huge, like, you know, a 1-credit class.
Yeah, that would be neat. We run into a lot of trouble with Texas law and hours required and out-of-state tuition and
Okay.
nonsense like that. So I don't mean to criticize your idea. It does sound fun. It sounds like it would be a good idea. Requiring it is tough for us. And you know, with the CS department, it was a surprise to a bunch of us that they've been using Java instead of, you know, another language. I mean, a few of us were several semesters behind in realizing that they had made this change. So that lets you know how much communication and how much we had.
So math and CS don't sit in the same department
Oh,
at your
no.
school? Okay, right.
No, in fact, our computer science department just now moved over from the College of Business.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so that's where they were
Right.
until recently.
And they're very happy about moving.
And we're happy to
Yeah.
have them, of
Yes.
course.
Business faculty are extremely hard to deal with.
But they did get business faculty salaries, so.
Yeah, on the proofs course, you can also do this stuff in web work, and instead of having to share the problem back with you, it's all just collected in one big problem
Yeah.
set to grade or open-ended questions.
So WebWorks not free for us anymore though, right?
No, it is true.
If we host it ourselves?
Yes,
Okay, but we have to get somebody to agree to host it,
just like Sage.
right?
We had a computer science faculty at our university who just got the disk or whatever, the installation, and did it all himself.
Mhm.
Very
Actually-
happy with it, so.
Okay.
Jason Auburn's written an install script, and so it now is running, saying yes to a bunch of things, and typing the passwords too.
Okay. Yeah.
When did you have the opportunity to, with the Maymester class for the graduate students,
Mhm.
to actually have the graduate students essentially put together maybe a voluntary boot camp for the, you know, during the summer, that they're in charge of teaching that, but then you can get the interactions, you
Yeah.
know, bring in the undergraduates and maybe get the interaction between the undergraduates and the graduate students, but also provide them the opportunity to kind of catch up on Sage before
Yeah.
the fall semester starts.
That's a really good suggestion. I don't know how much attendance we would get, but if we could get enough students to make it worthwhile, that sounds like a great idea. Well, thank you all for your suggestions and thanks for listening to me.
Nathan Carter.